parents, friends of mine have a 13-year-old. They asked me recently what I thought about them giving their 13-year-old a cell phone. And I asked them to talk about it. I asked them, what their opinions were, what their daughter was saying to them, and what her friends were saying to her, and what other parents had shared with them as parents. And they were approaching it thoughtfully, but you could tell they were really struggling with it. And what it ultimately came down to was that all her friends had one. And I asked them, okay, let's imagine for a moment none of her friends had one. Would you be the first parent to give your child a cell phone in this social group? And they didn't like that. I think it brought some clarity that was maybe, it's like sometimes you go to someone for advice and you want them to tell you what you want them to tell you.
Right.
And they don't tell you that, so then you go to the next person,
right,
and then the next person, and then the next person, until someone tells you what you want to hear, and then you say, you're a very wise person. I'm really glad I sought your advice because you told me exactly, what I wanted to hear to begin with.
Yeah.
So I think parents are in this dilemma. It seems parents struggle to do things that are countercultural. How do we encourage parents to have the wisdom, the inner strength, the whatever it is it takes to make countercultural choices for themselves and then to teach their children to do the same?
Yeah, this is the answer that the parents are probably not looking for. But in order to be countercultural, you have to have a culture. And parents are lazy. And I give into this myself sometimes too. So this is not pointing fingers, but this is just naming a thing what it is. And if we don't take a step back and have an intentionality to the way we live our life, then we are swept away with whatever else somebody else is deciding should be the way we live our life. And of course, that's not one person. That's a whole sort of movement. And that might be guided by technology, big corporations, media, whatever it is. The point is, we all have the strength, the capacity, and the calling to create our own culture. But it takes intentionality. It means we just have to decide at one point to say, I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to pray and write a family mission statement. I'm going to decide what we stand for. I'm going to give my children something different, not because I'm trying to react to culture, but because I'm trying to be procreative and actually create something good. And if it happens to be against something in culture, sure, we'll stand up against what's in culture. Maybe it'll be for some of the things in culture. But we're going to have a justification for why we're doing it. If you have that justification, it's not a fight anymore. It means you've grounded yourself in who you believe your mission to be. And then it's easy. But it's impossible to tell a parent to fight against culture when you're not giving them something else to stand on. So I totally understand why parents are frustrated and why they're looking for different answers. So we need to give them that first step, which is to say, build your own culture first. And then it's going to make sense why you're going to say no to those things, and your kids have something else that they can believe in you for. And even if it's difficult for them, they're going to have a reason at least to go along with what you're saying.
Powerful. I'm struck by your comment, parents are lazy. I think, that looks like a headline to me. I think a lot of parents will hear that and object to that. I think it's like, if you say to someone, you're stingy, people automatically react to that because most people think of themselves as generous.
Yeah.
I think if you say to someone, you're lazy, I think people automatically react to that because most people don't think of themselves as lazy. I think that is uniquely true for parents. When you say parents are lazy, say a little bit more about that so that there's not 50 million comments on this video about that one comment.
Well, listen, again, let me say it again. I am lazy and I am stingy. And I have imperfections and brokenness inside of me. So I'm not at all sitting here saying from a position of perfection, this is what everybody else is doing wrong. This is me saying I feel that disappointment that parents feel when kids are off track. I feel that way too. And when I look inside myself, this is what I come up with. And I realize that there's a lot more that I can actually affect when I look at myself first. And so I also realize that it's not a general judgment on somebody's identity. When I say I am lazy, I don't mean that I'm identifying myself as a lazy person. What I'm saying is I have parts of me that are lazy. And I have parts of me that are stingy, and I have parts of me that are selfish. And I have parts of me that want to just be in control of everything and not take orders from anybody and not even submit to Father in heaven. Parts of me. And a lot of times what I find is when people don't accept some of those parts, those negative parts, those distasteful parts, we end up repressing and then sending those parts into the dark where they're going to continue to do battle. And a lot of times they win. So sometimes those lazy parts come out, sometimes those selfish parts come out, and that's what ends up sort of ruling the day. So none of that is to say that parents don't have certainly plenty on their plate, certainly plenty to fight against. And we need support. We need to support each other. We need to not be name calling, not calling anybody the name of laziness. But we want to be able to work together to build community around supporting what is good and actually helping each other with what's not good and building each other up and carrying one another's burdens. But we have to first recognize that there's burdens and there's imperfections so that we can actually present them to each other for that kind of support.